It's now time to turn to the skilled technical workforce. Dr. Victor McCrary.
Thank you, Dr. Sylvain. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to start by reminding everyone that the members of the task force on the skilled technical workforce are Vicki Chandler, Bob Groves, James Jackson, Carl Lineberger, Jerry Richmond. We also are joined by Vince Cerf, who was a stalwart supporter of this effort during his tenure on the NSB. Vin, I want to just give my remarks to you is to keep telling it like it is, which I don't think you have no doubt that you will stop, and we would value your continued inputs in this area. Thank you for joining us, Vin. I'd also like to acknowledge the contributions of Deborah Ball, as well as Artie Bienstock, who challenged us to think about the critical role that teachers play in supporting all segments of the STEM workforce. I'd also like to welcome the newest members of the NSB and congratulate both Jerry and Maria on their reappointment to the board. We are supported by Reba Bandadavai, Matt Wilson, Christina Moranto, and Mateo Munoz in the board office. I'd also like to acknowledge Dr. Celeste Carter in EHR. Many thanks to the entire team for their support. Finally, I'd like to give thanks to Dr. Sylvain and Director Franz Cordova for your support and for the support of the team throughout this effort. Thank you so much. First order of business is approval of the July 2018 committee meeting minutes. We need to approve the July meeting minutes. Are there any changes or corrections needed to the minutes that you can see in your board book? Hearing no corrections, the minutes stand approved as presented. For the benefit of our veteran and new members alike, the skilled technical workforce refers to workers who need technical knowledge and skills in their jobs, but who do not have a four-year degree. In November 2017, the board formally established the task force on the skilled technical workforce to identify the barriers and opportunities facing this important segment of the STEM workforce. With 6 months left in our 18-month charge, today's meeting will focus primarily on finalizing how we will contribute to strengthening the STW in a lasting way, while drawing on the capabilities and responsibilities of the National Science Foundation and the National Science Board. So the first question many of you, particularly some of our new members, may ask is, why did NSB undertake this task? The mission of the National Science Foundation is fundamental research, economic development, and national security. Our nation and our economy depends on continued investments in fundamental research and the STEM workforce ecosystem at all levels, including researchers with advanced degrees and the over 16 million technical workers who are found in every sector and geographic locale in our country. For example, in terms of fundamental research, many of you have heard or visited the essential LIGO facility and the technical experts there who run the massive HVAC are to that project and how important those people are. In terms of our economic development piece, as we witnessed in Detroit, the automation that is fundamentally transforming the nature of work, particularly when we talk about autonomous vehicles, and we were told about the anywhere between 800,000 and 1 million workers that they will need. These workers are no longer like the workers that Henry Ford had in 1920. These are people that have to bring very sophisticated, capable skills. Now in the years ahead, STEM-capable workers will play a critical role in economic development and the progress of science for the decades ahead. As you know, there is continued bipartisan interest in this topic within Congress, and several bills have been proposed in the House and Senate related to the skilled technical workforce. The administration is also keenly interested, and in July established the President's National Council for the American Worker, which includes the presence of our director of the National Science Foundation, Dr. Franz Cordova. Before we dive into proceedings, I'd like to highlight two recent listening sessions we've had at Florence Darlington Technical College and the ATE Principal Investigators Conference. Both events were first-rate and extremely valuable. They occurred in September, as all of the listening sessions have been, in giving us insight into the opportunities and challenges facing people and groups involved with the skilled technical workforce. You can find detailed summaries in all of our listening sessions on the NSB's website. As an aside, I hope the listening session model is one that the NSB will continue to use for its various activities, including the vision moving forward. And I would say go to that website. We have a number of videos, a number of interviews with some of the participants at some of these locales. I want to thank the staff again for putting this all together. We have two main items on our agenda today: an update from NSF's National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics on their efforts to gather policy-relevant data on the skilled technical workforce, and a discussion of progress and the next steps for the task force. As I noted earlier, let's use the remaining time to finalize how we will contribute to strengthening the STW in a lasting way while drawing on the capabilities and responsibilities of the National Science Foundation and the National Science Board. At our July meeting, we identified data as one area which NSF and the NSB could make a valuable contribution to the STW. We're working with our colleagues at the National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics, a division within NSF's Director for Social, Behavioral, and Economic Sciences, to collect policy-relevant data on the STW. I'd like to turn the floor over to Dr. Skip Lapia, SBE's Assistant Director, who's going to tell you a little bit about NCSES and introduce Ms. Imelda Rivers, Director of NCSES.
Thank you, Dr. McCrary, and thank you, NSB members, for all that you do for this agency and for the people that NSF serves. I've been asked to say a few words about the NCSES. The National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics is an organization within the Social, Behavioral, and Economics Directorate of NSF. NCSES is also one of 13 principal statistical agencies of the United States government. Many people here or watching online may know that the NCSES as the organization that works with the NSB to produce the science and engineering indicators. The indicators are vitally important to the nation. Yet NCSES has a broader footprint. NCSES's job, as mandated by statute, is to provide a central clearinghouse for the collection, interpretation, and analysis of data on scientific and engineering resources, and to provide a source of information for policy formulation by other agencies of the federal government. Today, NCS collects data on topics such as research and development trends, the science and engineering workforce, our country's science and technology competitiveness, and the progress of STEM education. We at NSF appreciate your ongoing support of NCSES, and now I'm happy to introduce to you its director, Imelda Rivers.
Thanks, Dr. Lapia. And thank you, the National Science Board members, for inviting us and giving us this opportunity to speak on this very important topic. Yes, we at the National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics have a dual role within NSF and within the federal statistical community. We have strategic objectives and goals which contribute directly to NSF's mission. Our focus is both external as a national resource and internal as a part of NSF. In fulfilling our mission to provide information on the science and engineering enterprise, we are governed by the principles and practices of the federal statistical community, which requires to provide, as has been pointed out, policy-relevant, policy-neutral information. Now on the skilled technical workforce and our efforts. We actually have been receiving information since the 1990s from stakeholders about the gap in our data on the skilled technical workforce. Traditionally, NCSES has focused on providing information on the education and employment of scientists and engineers from the bachelor's degree and above. And given prior emphasis on pipeline rather than pathways, the low numbers of post-secondary degree holders in the skilled technical workforce didn't justify the cost of providing national-level estimates for them. The change from pipeline to pathway reopened conversations about the need for NCSES to collect information on skilled technical workers as an important segment of the STEM population. The external audiences for these data have increased, as we've just heard, about the importance of the skilled technical workforce to the U.S. economy. To address stakeholder needs, including the National Science Board, NCSES is conducting a feasibility study to gather national-level information for evidence-based policymaking on this topic. Our preferred approach for this effort is similar to our other approaches, which is to look at this holistically. We like to, number one, involve the stakeholders on needs and importance. We analyze currently available data to provide national estimates and demographics. Limited, though, for the skilled technical workforce population at this time. The third thing that we like to do is to determine the feasibility of gathering in-depth information by traditional sources such as surveys, but also non-traditional sources. Do we have administrative sources that could be used to help inform this topic? The Sei report provides the analysis of the currently available data. Given prior discussions on SEI, I will focus my discussion on NCSES feasibility efforts. So we're collaborating with two of our federal statistical agencies, the National Center for Education Statistics and the Census Bureau, to provide better in-depth information and to even develop some useful tools for analysis. Together, we are exploring these best methods, and we're trying to understand issues such as how individuals enter the skilled technical occupations, how they maintain relevance in these occupations, and how they advance in these occupations, in their occupational fields. These are complex issues to address. To meet these needs at a minimum, we need to determine and identify how to find the skilled technical workers in the general population. We need to also understand the topics that are of interest, such as education, occupation, training, work experiences, programs, and demographics. And then we need to provide some clarity around the topics. Now, these may sound easy as we lay them out, but they're actually very complex when you think about the variety of issues that we would have to address on a national level. Some of those challenges include developing a standard definition so that we can have standard information. We also have been looking at providing comprehensive information, not only on the skilled technical workforce, but also on their employers. What are their needs? We need to identify approaches with other federal statistical agencies that would ensure that we're reducing redundancies within the federal statistical collection system. And garnering their support is a little difficult, as some of their missions are more focused on the general population, while ours is focused on scientists and engineers. We feel that we are best suited to help bring these conversations along, but we can't do it alone. Obtaining resources to address the content, the statistical issues, analytic, and project management complexities are very important for this project. Wanted to let you know that we have begun stakeholder discussions. We have been talking with the task force and other NSF directorates. We're also talking with other federal agencies about why this particular topic is important to them and what types of data do they need. The types of in-depth information being considered include technical occupations, professional certifications, workforce and experience programs, apprenticeships, career pathways. These are topics that are all near and dear to our hearts in terms of the data that we need to address. We're planning workshops where we want to talk with employers about what are their skills. What are the skills that they're looking for in the staff, and how are they communicating that to the community in a way that skilled technical workers will be prepared to fill the positions that they have? We're also working to find out what are the types of questions that people can answer on a national level. These are all very varied as you talk to individuals. How do you develop questions that then everyone can answer and you can provide national estimates? And then we need to understand from policymakers, how will this information ultimately be used? We want to make sure that the use for the survey is thought of in the beginning, if a survey is needed. And that brings me to another effort that we have, which is we're looking at some non-survey measures that have the potential to provide more timely and granular data on non-traditional data sources. We're in the early stages of that, but I'll give you two examples. We're exploring state-level administrative data, including licensure and professional certification, to understand the relationship between credentials and specific occupations. We're also examining real-time jobs data based on the analysis of millions of job listings to understand the proportion of job ads that are for skilled technical positions. The outcomes of this feasibility study will dictate our future steps. What we want you to know is that we are listening to the community and being as responsive as we can, given our other varied efforts. John Finnemore is here with me, is heading up an NCSES team to ensure that we engage in a holistic manner on this effort. And you all are familiar with Dr. Amy Burke, who is also doing analysis within the Science and Engineering Indicators Report. This is a complex issue to address. It is a community need, and we are encouraging collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Skip and Imelda, as well as John and Amy. We appreciate your help on, and I really enjoyed your report out this, because this is very important. Before I move on, you know, there are a couple of things I'd like to just open up to the board just for a few minutes for questions and comments. And that is, you know, earlier this morning we heard about the S&E indicators and things in terms of thematic reports that we have and one-pagers. And I also saw on the matrix there were one-pager on the STW, so that's really good. My questions are, and I open it up to the audience here, how can the NSB help you, as well as are there any questions from the board?
I was just thinking that we threw a simple question at you, and it's really challenging. I can see it. And I just want to say how much I appreciate the thoughtfulness that you're putting into this. I think it will pay off for the country in the long run, although I recognize that it really is challenging.
Thank you, Artie. Any other questions? Vint.
I was just thinking about credentials and credential programs. There's an increasing number of them, I suspect, although I don't have any data, which is why we're hoping you'll be able to get it. In particular, companies like Cisco and Microsoft issue credentials for certified engineers. But it's very interesting to find out how many of them end up making a living out of having those credentials. So is there any reason for those companies to want to report that information? Is there an incentive, in other words, for these programs to be reported? The second thing is that in the university programs, there are often short courses and other kinds of credentialed arrangements, and increasingly in online settings as well. We have organizations like ABAT that evaluate and certify programs at universities. Do they also get into certificate programs at all?
So thank you for those questions. Oh, was I?
I think that ABET does technology programs, but I don't know if they're 2 or 4 year degrees. So the T stands for technology. Maybe it goes what?
They do 2 year and 4 year.
Right. They do, okay.
Just a comment, one institution I'm affiliated with is undergoing ABET. They have modified the questions that they've had, so they have shortened some of their requirements, and one of them is outcomes. And how are you tracking those outcomes? Any other questions or discussion? Oh, Emilio.
Yeah, I suspect that most universities, certainly the line-grant schools, for example, tend to have a lot of certificate programs. There's a huge one at Michigan State on GIS and remote sensing, and it's not a 2-year program. I'm not actually sure how long the training is, but it's not in a degree program. It's a certificate, and those people go to jobs all over the place on spatial analysis, which is a kind of skill I would put it within the technical force. And those people may or may not go on advanced degree. I employed one at my previous university who came from Michigan State, and then we encouraged him after 8 years of being a staffer to get a master's degree so he could maybe increase his salary. But we had to force him. He was very happy with his salary. And so, in fact, he had achieved his goals he was just not very ambitious. But I think that data should be available on people completing certificates and then the tracking of those people.
Bob.
Let me say again a few things that Imelda said, because I think they're really important. The technical difficulty of this area is partially a result of how we've organized federal statistics. So this is a problem that spans education, it spans labor, it spans all of the agencies that study the private sector firms. None of them view this as of particular mission-critical nature to them. So having a single agency, NCSES, a rather small agency, take this on for the country is asking a lot. And I'm heartened by the interagency group that France is on now as a tool of giving visibility at a higher level to this problem. It really is a national problem. It can't really be solved by NCSES. So that's one thing. And my vote would be to weigh in to elevate it as a informational problem for the country that needs new kinds of cooperation. The second thing is just a pitch to solve this problem in a partial way. It's such an important problem, it's worth solving partially, it seems to me. And the notion of using existing data sources rather than launching a multi-year effort to have a perfect data structure is laudable, and we ought to support that. And that's going to give up on quality and depth and so on, but increase the value of timeliness for what we're doing for the country.
Hey, Bob, thank you. That's very important. Those 2 points are extremely important, particularly if we can leverage the activities that are going to happen at the council on a national level and make them aware of also the resources that are needed for this. Maureen, did you have a question? Or Panch?
Yeah. Thanks. I had just two comments. First is increasingly more and more like certificates, more and more continuous professional development programs are becoming in the workplace very important. And with the future of workforce, this is going to become even more important. And universities are participating in terms of designing programs to address that need. There's retraining, reskilling, those kinds of things that are for people who are there. So it's a point to be noted that I think will become even more prevalent. The second thing I was going to bring up is this data sources and analytics that is available out there. I just take Burning Glass as one example. There are many, many such data sources out there. So what are we doing to try to see how we source or synchronize or mutually learn from each other? It used to be NCs. Was the big data source and the analytics that came out, rich, and it continues to be so. But now we have so many other players. Not all of them are reliable, so that should be taken with a grain of salt. But still, we should be aware of and see what can be leveraged in that context.
We have a member of the public who has a question.
No, just a reasonably informed comment. My name is Richard Gilbert. I'm at the Engineering College at the University of South Florida, and I was a chair of the Chemical Engineering Department. ABET is a certifying agency for four-year engineering programs and two-year college technology programs. It is mission critical in the four-year programs. It's mildly accepted in the two-year programs for a very practical reason. There is a minimal number of faculty with engineering credentials or technology credentials that have to be at the institution before they can even apply. And they do not have any certifications of merit or anything like that.
Thank you very much for sharing that. John?
Yeah, for engineering disciplines, there must be 30 that are listed when you talk about something like 30 different engineering disciplines. And then from physical sciences, mathematics, SPE sciences is another group there. So if you total that up, you probably get maybe 60 compartments, 60, 80 compartments of people where we where you put them into data. Is there such a list for the skilled technical workforce?
Well, we're developing, it's not a, it's, we have developed a working definition for this next cycle of indicators in which we use occupation codes that include the fields that you discussed, but we've also expanded following the work done by Jonathan Rothwell for the academies on their skilled technical workforce project. We've expanded to include occupations in construction and extraction, the area of maintenance, installation, and repair, and the area of production. So those are the occupations. So in addition to the science and engineering related occupations that we have traditionally analyzed as part of the S&E enterprise, we have added these other areas and a few other occupation codes, but these are all codes that were developed by, or that are available in conjunction with the using data from the American Community Survey. And so those are the data that we're looking at. Is that what you were asking?
Well, occupations and certification are different. So a chemical engineer could work in the banking industry. I mean, but we're talking about the training, the certification, which we call a bachelor's degree or a PhD or a 2-year degree or whatever. But are there cubby holes like we put 4-year degree graduates in? Are there cubby holes like that for the skilled technical workforce?
I'll start, and then I'll have the colleagues answer with some more details. But these are exactly the issues that are very important to understanding. One of the things that we do with our current surveys is to start with those people that we know have particular degrees, and then we ask them questions that would get at what they're doing now. So if we're going to a population of skilled technical workforce, we would be able to answer or to ask them questions related to what was their specific training in, what is their current occupation. So we get an educational history and an occupational history. And then we ask questions, and traditionally we've asked questions about association or close association with your training to your current occupation. And if there is not that close association, we've even asked questions as to why there might be a deviation. So that's getting at the complexity of it at a high level, and then John may have some more information on details.
So one of the challenges that we're finding, whether we're looking for information on credentials, whether it be online courses, certifications, licenses, when we look at that information, it's isolated. It's not connected to the outcomes associated with those credentials. And so the challenges we're finding is that we can use administrative data sources, we can use non-traditional data sources, but they provide one piece of the puzzle. They don't show the connection between the credential and the outcome. So the pathways that we're trying to understand, that's where we're having trouble initially in terms of finding the connectivity among these different pieces.
Maureen, one last question.
I think it's more of a comment. I've worked pretty intimately at the University of Utah with people who are developing graduate certification programs, so something shy of a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree. But it seems to me these things nationally will capture a lot of the information you're trying to get at, because they're very nimble, they're very responsive to the local business environment. They're developed in response to requests from the community. We need people who have documented skills in some usually 2-semester skill set, and there are clear requirements for all of these graduate and undergraduate certification programs that would maybe provide some insight into what are business people asking for, and how does the university respond in terms of educational requirements to achieve those goals? And who comes in? They track the students. What kind of a degree program are you in? Are you currently an undergraduate in engineering who also wants to get certified in, web design? And what does that take?
Thank you, Maureen. Next, we will discuss our progress and what we want to accomplish in our remaining 6 months. Please stay. We've learned through a variety of activities, including listening sessions, panel discussions, and informal meetings with stakeholders that the scale of the skilled technical workforce and the groups that play a role in strengthening it are considerable. For example, state and local agencies, businesses, educators, high school guidance counselors, parents. In addition to NSF, several federal agencies play a role, with some investing billions annually in the STW, as Bob has alluded to in terms of the Department of Labor and Department of Education. We've also learned that the skilled technical workers often have a heterogeneous mix of educational credentials: 2-year degrees, stackable certificates, licensures, coursework, etc. Workplace training and on-the-job experience. The task force has observed that the STW faces obstacles similar to those in other segments of the workforce. For instance, math proficiency, as well as challenges specific to the STW, such as HR hiring practices, community and technical college stigma. In short, the STW is both rich and complex, as you have just had testified on. In the Diligent Board book, you'll find a backgrounder aimed at informing our conversation today. I'd like to thank members of the task force for their input and feedback on earlier drafts of the backgrounder document. You've helped clarify our goals and priorities. And let me walk through the document before I open the floor for discussion. And I just want to say as a side, I want to thank everybody, but I particularly want to thank you, Carl, because you kind of bring that different perspective, that counter perspective to it. So that has been very, very valuable to it. The first page highlights some of our progress to date. Pages 2 and 3 highlight the important work that NSF is already doing and proposes 4 areas where NSF and the National Science Board could make a lasting impact. The first major strategy is data. The task force can continue to provide input to NCSCS as appropriate to advance the work and highlight STW data in NSB reports. And as you've probably seen, looks like you're already diving right into that. And we also really help and appreciate any comments that you have from the board to help us in that. Another idea under this strategy is to help define an STW data agenda by bringing together data providers, federal statistical agencies, and private and nonprofit organizations who collect data on this segment of the workforce, with data users such as educational professionals, researchers, and others to discuss pressing data needs related to the STW. The second major strategy is messaging. We've heard again and again that stigma with respect to skilled technical jobs in community colleges continues to be a barrier. We could continue engaging in sustained strategic communication to highlight to students, educators, and policymakers, as well as many others, the importance of the skilled technical workforce. I highlight a couple of the ideas that are listed under this section. Issue STW-related one-pagers using indicators, as been talked about earlier in the committee on an external engagement. Raise stakeholders' awareness of existing NSF-funded research and other NSF-produced resources related to the STW. Similar effort to the data, the task force could share that we've learned with many stakeholders what we've interviewed, kind of a lessons learned, particularly like the Association of School Counselors, who was a very insightful interview, because as they told us, many of the state boards look at resourcing to high schools based on college-bound students, but community college is not defined as a college, okay? So they now have to change their messaging to post-secondary, okay? So there are some archaic practices that we have to look at, as well as some of the local conferences. For example, Maryland just held its second blue-collar STEM conference, where they had a number of different agencies as well as associations. This one it was a piece of information that came from the machinists and manufacturers to talk about the list of salaries and occupations, and there were a large number of students. And I would just want to call out Phil Rogowski, who's in the audience, who headed that effort. The third major strategy area is research, and that's something that NSF does very, very well in terms of collection of both research and data. In addition to ATE, NSF invests around $1 billion per year on STEM education and workforce development. Existing research on learning, broadening participation, and other relevant issues, while not directly aimed at the STW, could benefit the STW. During our remaining time, we could, and of the task force that we want, these remaining 6 months, is to develop a better understanding of NSF-wide research investments on issues that are relevant to the STW, for example, mathematics and computer science education, which NSF has done very well. Continue working with NSF leadership and staff to help identify strategies that could inform future NSF-funded research in this area and/or foster partnerships between research universities and community and technical colleges. One example is what we saw with Clemson, with what they're doing in terms of advanced manufacturing and materials, and how they have partnered with Florence Darlington Technical College, because at some point down the road, they want to future-proof that research by making sure they have a workforce when we have technology commercialization. The fourth and final major strategy is to embed the importance of STW within NSB activities. It is important that the impact of the task force's work lasts beyond its end date. One way to ensure this is to integrate some STW-related efforts into ongoing and future NSB activities. For example, there are obvious connections to SEP and the indicators, thematic reports, and companions. The NSB Vision Project will likely address issues pertaining to the skilled technical workforce, as it is a critical component of the STEM workforce ecosystem. And the Committee on External Engagement could reinforce the importance of the STW through ongoing stakeholder engagement efforts, both local and on the Hill. With that, I'd like the remaining time, which is just very little, open up the floor for discussion on our next steps. And I'll put out some bullet points here just to think about. What should we think about in terms of our deliverables? What are the sorts of deliverables which should be available to Congress or the administration? What else or who else should we engage with before writing a final report? Again, also, how do we help, for example, Dr. Cordova and the council? How will our activities over the next 6 months feed into long-term efforts such as the Vision Project and other NSB activities? I'm open the floor for questions or discussion or comments. Vin?
So a couple of things have occurred to me. Everything that we try to capture statistics for tend to be kind of formalized. Even the credentialing is a kind of formal program. And yet I'm seeing a great deal of corporate training going on to help employees stay current. At Google, there must be 100 different events every day scattered across the company where people come in to give talks on technical topics. And so there's this concerted effort inside the company to refresh training and awareness of new technologies and things like that. I wonder whether there's any way for us to find out how common it is for the corporate enterprise to keep its employees up to date by having internal programs like that. I remember going to work for IBM in 1965 and taking a 6-week program on systems engineering. It was required when you walked in the door. So you learned the IBM way of doing things. So I just don't know whether those less formal programs are even accessible from the statistical point of view, but I wonder whether we can figure out how important they are in American enterprise.
Thank you, Vint. Any other questions or comments? Julia.
I'm just going to second what Vint said. I think that's an incredibly important point, because I think that many companies, and this is anecdotal at this point, actually find that the product of the education system, wherever they happen to be, do not appropriately prepare students for the work that they are going to be expected to do. And so I think a tremendous amount of the skilled technical workforce is actually developed by the companies themselves and not through community colleges or anything else. My second point was going to be the importance of state and local, but especially state government in all of this, because the community colleges are state entities, and therefore engaging, really as we start talking about education writ large and the pipeline and so forth, you can't get very far in that conversation without involving at least the states, if not more local government.
Thank you, Julia. Any other comments? Go ahead. Artie.
I hesitate to ask this, but I will. The skilled technical workforce jobs are potentially a source for economic mobility for those in the lower economic strata. When you look at the statistics, approximately 18% of American children grow up in poverty. To what extent has the STW actually led to social mobility in that group, or is it that the handicaps that the children grow up in those areas are so great that they can't even join that group? Do we know anything about that?
I'll give you, and then I'll turn it over to the panel, I'll give you some just historical anecdotal evidence, is that similar, akin to the military, which Department of Labor has somewhat said is akin to going into the STW in some of those occupations, even though those occupations are limited and manifest themselves only within a military perspective, have opened the doors to those folks because there's no pedigree involved. They can get right into those jobs, they can learn a trade, and they can make a living, albeit somewhat limited if it's certain military skills. So there is some evidence. Also, from the military, some of those skills they learn, for example, electronics, welding, those things are transferable to the civilian and open public sector and have been able to provide opportunities. But in terms of numbers, I can't give you that.
I'll speak to 2 points. The first is in response to your point, and like Dr. McCrary said, a lot of the information we have is anecdotal. If you go to any conference where we're talking about skilled technical occupations, there's always anecdotal information that there are examples, there are stories of people who have gone to community college, entered this workforce, and brought them into a different place economically and socially than where they were. We do not have nationally representative information that describes that phenomenon as a whole. So that's one issue. The other issue is that the on-the-job type training, the online courses, the corporate-sponsored courses, we've done cognitive interviewing to test some of the questions we're looking at trying to capture in an online survey. And the challenge is that people describe these different types of training in many different ways. And what we've come up with is on-the-job training as a vague catch-all category, but to use that in a way to develop policy, that's where it becomes a challenge. So it's a difficulty in getting from what is being experienced and taking that to a survey questionnaire where people will understand the concept in a standardized way.
Vince, if I may. So John's response, I think, sort of crystallized what I was going to say, which is the topic you've talked about, I think, is just so, there's such a broad spectrum there. Skilled workforce goes from welders and so on, all the way up to training the executive team at companies. And so I'll just give one example. It's public. There's been a lot of press about it. So we signed an agreement with Infosys recently to be the sole provider for cybersecurity for them, training, 2,000 employees, entry-level, mid-level, top-level executives, very different modalities, very different extents of training, et cetera. So I think it's very difficult to sort of, I think it's actually perhaps incorrect to try and capture all of that in the same, with the same sort of framework. To Julia's point, I've certainly heard of very large companies saying we've got 50,000 employees we'd like to be trained in data science, or 100,000 in other cases. And I think part of it is not that the schools aren't doing a good job necessarily, but that data science, for instance, and some of the newer aspects of it were not taught to any of us as professors, and we weren't trained in that. And I think these are very sort of new areas. And so I think companies, to stay relevant, are trying to sort of find out how to do this. But a lot of them are also just trying to work it out and haven't quite figured out how to do this. That's my take.
So Suresh, what we have done and where we are focused on is just that workforce that is post-high school but pre-bachelor's, okay? This is, and if what we've used as a concept, because I do agree, if you don't have something quantified, it's very hard to get your hands around it, is this concept of the worker value chain. In this case, the whole STEM workforce from post-high school all the way up to PhD. we've been concentrating on that one segment that's post-high school, pre-bachelor's, because for some of the upstream things that we have seen, whether it's our research facilities, even things in terms of national security. For example, when we mention welders, if you think about, we've talked with people at the DOD, those employees have to be U.S. citizens, and yet they can't find those skilled folks to do welding on the latest Ohio-class submarine, okay, which is highly technological. So that's where we've bounded it to just bound that scope. So we've not gone bachelor's and above or looked at online education or those things for people beyond that. Imelda, did you have a comment also?
I did. Thank you very much. I wanted to point out that you asked what help do we need, and this is where we need your help. This is a very complex issue. There are things that we can definitely address, or we could try to address it. Please strike that definitely. But there are things that we can try to address that would provide national level information. But is that the information that you would need then to do a deeper dive, to go to the communities to find out how does this information tie back into the national level data? That's where the strength of having the national level estimates is. And you're absolutely correct. I think there are two different paths at least. And that's why we said we would want to talk, at least have workshops with the employers. That's a very big area. When you talk with people, the skilled technical workers, often they are not very aware of the differences in on the types of on-the-job training, which is what John was talking about in terms of cognitive testing. That is, we're asking them, what do you think you're getting? Is it a certification, which is different than a certificate, which is different from licensures? And all of these things then relate to how we provide the information that's needed. So the help that we need is, where can we be most effective in providing you the information that's going to be used for decision-making on this topic, in providing you the information that's actually going to get you back to understanding how we can have an impact with these data at the individual level and at the community level. These are regional issues, as have been discussed, and partnerships with industry and academic institutions and government. It's really critical to have all the players in on the discussion. I wanted to mention that as well. And this is why we're also using universities, our partnering and collaborating with universities on issues such as burning glass and using non-traditional sources to look at this issue. But as you've heard and as you're describing, it is a complex issue. We would love to have your help in scoping.
One final question, Steve. Sorry about that. Celeste.
See. Is this on?
Yes.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Celeste Carter from the National Science Foundation. I am the lead program officer on the ATE program. And I just wanted to say there is a lot of data out there. I don't know that we do an effective job of collecting it as far as the pathways that students take. I did just facilitate a president's panel at the ATE conference a few weeks ago. One of the current presidents of a Minnesota community college started on the assembly line in an auto factory. And she then detailed her role as she moved through education. She credits the being a center director for one of our national automotive centers with the reason she is now currently a president at a community college in the United States. So again, that's anecdotal, but we do have a lot of those. We do have, it's a publication from probably almost 10 years ago that is just student success stories that were gathered from ATE students that were in ATE supported programs. So more work to be done, but I do think we do know that that these programs are a pathway to economic viability for many people in the United States.
Thank you, Celeste. Stephen.
Just in terms of supporting the anecdotal information, I understand and really salute the fact that we pay a good bit of attention to alternative paths to success like community colleges. I am a new member of the National Science Foundation Board. I'm certainly the only member of the board and probably the only person in this room who does not have a PhD. And my life stands as testament to there are many different ways to wonderful success. And so I salute you and want to help you with the program going forward.
Staff, take that down, that we have another member of the task force. Due to the fact of time, we won't take any more questions, but please, we can have something when we have that break. I want to thank you all for your input. We will follow up with the task force to finalize our strategy for the remaining 6 months. And I just want to say it's really important that what we deliver is focused, you know, in that area of the post-high school, pre-bachelor. To your point, Suresh, to keep it focused, because otherwise we could end up boiling the ocean, and we can't take that on. And I also really ask that we continue these discussions as we start going down this path toward closure the next 6 months. And I invite some of the new members, I think I have one, that will join the task force. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for your participation. There being no further business, this meeting of the task force on the skilled technical workforce is adjourned at 10:48.
Thank you, Dr. McCrary. We'll now adjourn this open session, and we have a short break, and we resume in closed plenary at 11 o'clock.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I like that ending.